Welcome. Thank you for joining me here today. I'm joined by the wonderful Sandra and Félix from Project 10, a queer organization servicing youth in Ahuntsic. I'll let you explain what Project 10 is and also introduce yourselves.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Sandra Mouafo. I am the Executive Director for Project 10. Project 10 works with youth age 14 to 25 that are anywhere under the umbrella of LGBTQIA+. So anybody that's queer, whether they're questioning whether they're further along or not within their journey, is welcome in the space. And ultimately, we kind of operate in three main pillars. So the first one is services, which is accompaniment that is on an individual basis. That's anything ranging from Commissioner of Oath work, so gender and name marker changes, our gender gear, our therapy subsidies for diagnostics purposes to access gender-affirming care, accompaniment to legal or medical appointments, or just active listening appointments. So anything really to support the individual being able to thrive. The second pillar is our program, so that includes our drop-in centers, which are 3 times a week, during which people are able to kind of break isolation, make friends, meet new people. Sometimes we also have activities, like right now our D&D groups are very, very popular, so Dungeons & Dragons. The youth love it. I was ashamed when I was into it as a child, but we don't talk about that. And then we also have like a sewing clinic, and we have different types of workshop that the youth can do. We have also a Switch, we watch TV, and so essentially it's anything and everything that has to do with a sense of belonging and togetherness. And then the last pillar is Felix's, so I will let Felix explain it.
Hi, thank you so much for having us, or I guess for having you in our space. Thank you so much for coming and giving us a platform to talk about our work. So my name is Felix, I use they them pronouns. I am the Education and Outreach Coordinator for Project 10. So I am in charge or responsible for the last pillar of our work, which is education. So I go to schools primarily, but also work with other community organizations. And we do a lot of kiosks, so with the objective of getting people the information about what Project 10 services are, so anyone who would need to know that we exist, we work so that they can know when we're open, where we are, and what kind of services they can access. And I also do a lot of workshops, so in schools with teaching staff, but also with students themselves, as well as with intervention staff from other community organizations. And those range from the LGBT 101, so starting with the very basics of what different identities under our umbrella, the 2S LGBTQIA+ umbrella are, to more technical how to practice, for example, inclusive language in your day-to-day life. All of these workshops have a common goal of making spaces safer for our youth and decreasing stigma.
Honestly, that was really beautifully said, and I really like the explanation and how you laid everything out on the table, both of you. And I think something really interesting that Sandra said is this is also a space for youth who are, questioning, or whether they identify, or whether they're trans. And I think it's so important to give youth the space to, question without judgment. Your services, they're offered in which languages?
So we offer all of our services in both of the languages of the country, so in French and in English. That being said, the particularity of our services is that we focus primarily on the intersections of language and racial minorities. So as a result, the majority of the people that are coming to our offices are oftentimes Anglophone or allophones, because this is where the largest gap in accessing of services is. So when we think about accessing healthcare in any capacity, it is one thing to be on a waiting list for 3 decades to have a family doctor. It's another one to find one that actually speaks the language that you're most comfortable in, especially when it comes to discussing things like your body. It's very, very particular. There's very culturally competent language that you need to be privy to in order to be able to speak in a way that will allow you to feel confident but also understood and be able to self-advocate. And so those things are kind of what we do, but the majority of our staff is also bilingual. Felix and I are francophone, and so we're able to really navigate both spaces, but we really want to prioritize the English community as a result of there being the biggest need.
Yes, of course, and at Reisa we see that so often. there could be a really big lack of LGBTQIA plus organizations that can service in English. Some organizations, they have a very limited capacity to service people in English. They might have 1 or 2 staff that can speak English. But the whole point of this is to have people who are comfortable and able to express their emotions and, you know, what they need in a language that they're comfortable in. So it's very refreshing to see an organization doing this. And I think, Sandra, you mentioned this, and Felix wants to join in, you're talking about the intersectionality. I'm sure you have a very diverse group, and a lot of the youth coming in here are not only from Ahuntsic. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so our actual territory is all of Greater Montreal, and we are starting to slowly branch out into the rest of Quebec as well, as we're realizing that there is a large need also in the rest of Quebec for allophones, language minorities, more broadly, and for racialized queer folks, because there's just an absence of services that is targeting their specific intersections. When we think about intersectionality, it's a lot to do with ultimately allowing for people to show up holistically. So we're not asking you to be in a Black-only space where you won't be able to be necessarily as queer as you would like to be, or for that to be understood or welcomed openly. We're not asking you to be in a queer space within the province of Quebec, which is oftentimes very white-centric. And so we're allowing for people to show up holistically, and the different types of pillars that we provide is to be able to meet people wherever they're at in their journeys. So Felix's work is not just to go within community, within our own community to explain our realities, but it's also to go to people who have no clue what we're doing, who has no clue about any of the realities of our demographic, who are coming from a place of maybe escaping a bigoted background. And so we're really ranging widely in order to be able to reach as many people as possible and to be cognizant of wherever they may be coming from. And similarly, the diversity of our staff and our board echoes that. So when we think about staffing diversity, a lot of the time people want to see diversity in terms of racialization, but what we were looking at is diversity in terms of migration status. So we have people that are not from Canada or not from Quebec, not also from just Ontario, so other provinces in the country as well, which we don't often see or hear about. Thinking about different age demographics, there's a 10-year gap between the youngest and the oldest staff member, different racialization, different types of transness, different educational backgrounds as well. So we have people that don't have diplomas, we have people who have master's degrees, we have people that have diplomas in music, right? We really have diversity and more than just the things that we're accustomed to see. We have different types of ability. We are a very neurospicy bunch, so most of us are on some sort of ADHD medication or just neurodivergent in some way. And so that diversity really allows for us to, in every aspect of the work that we do, be pluralistic in our approach and in our perspective. So when we make decisions collectively, somebody will be able to be like, oh, let's consider what it's also like when you're coming from a different province, or when you don't speak the language, or when you are dealing with immigration, or when you're looking for a doctor and whatnot. And so intersectionality is really in the intention of everything that we do, because it's embedded in the structure of who's doing it.
Yeah, it's integrated into your programs, into your staff, into your board. And it sounds like you give a voice to youth with just simply with the programs that you're doing. Like you said, you have the D&D group, you have, I forget what the other groups are. And it sounds like you're giving a voice. You're not just shaping the programming based off what you believe the youth would be interested in. And I think it's interesting that you mentioned that the youngest youth and the oldest youth have a 10-year gap. Can you tell us a little bit about
youngest to oldest staff?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I guess the youngest to oldest youth will also have, because we service 14 to 25, so there will be an 11-year gap, I guess, to the youngest to oldest person that we service. And we're also being very intentional in gathering feedback everywhere in our services, to like regularly during drop-in ask youth, what do you want to see, what are you dreaming for P10? We have a feedback box that youth can write little notes that we're reviewing regularly in my workshops. Also we gather feedback. We also have youth active at our board level. We have 3 youth seats.
That's
Yeah, we represent a third of the seats.
Yeah.
Wow, that's lovely.
Yeah.
So it's important for us to have youth be active at every level of including governance.
And for some of our partners, or maybe even youth listening to this episode, can you clarify what the drop-in program looks like, or what the other programs look like?
Yeah, so we have 3 drop-ins. So on the Wednesday is the young adults drop-in. All of our drop-in are semi-structured, meaning that when you come into the space, there's always 2 staff members that will be present and will be able to accompany any level of activity. So sometimes we do art activities, we draw, sometimes we watch a movie, sometimes we play the Switch, sometimes there's multiple things happening based off of what the youth wants to do. Sometimes we have more targeted activities like our D&D groups or also in clinics or other activities. We also have spa days and whatnot. Then on the Thursday, we have our gender diverse drop-in, where there's dedicated space for people that are of gender diversity or even questioning surrounding those things, and that there's a dedicated staff member that is also present to support in gender gear access. So to be able to kind of try different type of gender gear items, to ask questions, to make also custom orders if needed. And so that's basically the entire afternoon on the Thursday. And then on the Friday, we have our teens drop-ins. That's from 14 to 17. And essentially that's when the teens, which usually kind of run the place, so we kind of just do whatever they want to do. And ultimately, all of these spaces exist to kind of capture the different types of youth that we interact with without isolating them, right? So we want to look into what the 18 to 25-year-old needs, which will be different than what a 14-year-old will need. So there's more questions around things like employment, or questions about housing, or questions around breaking isolation. But we all know it's harder to make friends as adults because you don't have as much context to meet new people, and so the needs are slightly different. So we wanted to be able to create a space where they could connect with each other at a more similar level of life experience. And then for gender diversity, it was interesting to think about how do we mix everybody together when we think about the different journeys that you go through, and how you can get informed by what other people are going through, or sharing in real space, or even sometimes one person asking about gender gear, allow another person to kind of just listen in on the side and not ask too many questions because they might be shy, but that kind of gives permission to be a little bit bolder in the space. And then on the Fridays, the teens, a lot of them sometimes go to school together or not, and so we know that they hang out with each other outside of the B10 space, or sometimes meet and then hang out outside. Exactly. And so they're very much a nice, fun, lively bunch. And so all of them are kind of responsible for what they want in this space by voicing their desires. And when Félix was saying that ultimately we put a lot of emphasis on decision making that is informed from what they say, it's really that we won't create something that is not a direct demand from the youth. So the D&D group, something that the youth demanded we do. And so we're now doing it. The sewing clinic, same thing. And so anything that we're creating is based off of an actual need. We're never going to center ourselves in what we think that you want. We'll always pause and ask them, what is it that they actually need?
Yeah, it's never about, oh, I like this when I was younger, or I might be some of the staff could only be 5 years older than some of the people coming here. I think this is what I wanted 5 years ago. It's really about centering them and giving them a voice.
Absolutely.
And Felix, can you tell us a little bit about the education and outreach? Like, what type of topics are you hitting on when you're doing the trainings in schools or to professionals?
So we have a core offering of workshops, but I make it is important to me that all of those workshops are adaptable to the realities of, especially when we're going to other community organizations and that are not specifically working with LGBTQ plus youth, but where encounter people from our demographics in their realities and trying to train them to be more able to cater to their needs. It's also about catering to what their realities as intervention staff are. So it will have some flexibility. We have a workshop that we give very regularly is our LGBT 101. Okay. So this is a workshop during which we go over the most common identities under the LGBTQI plus umbrella. So we look at the acronym, and we talk about what Two-Spirit means. We talk about what lesbian means. We talk about it's a training that I give a lot in schools for secondary school students. You I think that there is this assumption that because students have TikTok, they know about the LGBTQ stuff. Like I feel like a lot of people are just like, oh yeah, but the youth know, right? And the youth tend to be the misconception I see a lot from them is they're confused between what non-binary versus bisexual means. They'll like think that they're the same thing or think that one end is the other or the other way around. Okay. We've also this year worked on creating a workshop that, two workshops I really like, but one that was really fun process. We worked with a doctoral student at Concordia to create a workshop on histories of queer resistance and talk about activism in our communities and the idea of demystifying where pride comes from and what the histories behind it are and why LGBTQ plus activism has been critical. And we also made it a point to focus on Canadian histories, so Canadian activism, because in our communities we tend to know a lot about the American activism of it all, but the Canadian, like I learned so much through that workshop and being able to share those stories then in schools, and also I think it opens a really fun door that students are like, learning about the Stonewall riots, but also like things that happened in their country, and it's different ways to grasp on and humanize our communities. We've also worked on a workshop on queer media literacy, so talking like misinformation and disinformation about our communities are such a big problem right now. There is a lot of information in the media that is really alarmist, specifically about two-spirit, trans, and non-binary identities, so it's important for us to talk about those things and talk about media literacy and how media literacy can be really critical as a form of education and activism, and talk about how misinformation and disinformation have been used in the past to dehumanize our communities and harm our communities, and what their effects were. So we talk about the AIDS crisis, we talk about Anita Bryant, for example, and then spend some time on like current misinformation messaging that is going around, and take some time to debunk it and then talk about it with the students. Yeah.
And similarly also, I think it's important to note that the two last workshops that Félix was mentioning are workshops that were actually requested from the school. So we have kind of a bank of workshops that we have available, and once we create a new one, that feeds into that bank because it does exist already, so it's not extra work. But the premise that when you go on our website, you're able to also request something based off of what your needs are. So the flexibility is based off of both what we have always being able to be adjusted to a specific need in the context of that need, but also making a custom request based off of an emerging need that you're witnessing within your community. So if you are somebody working at the DPG and you are now dealing with more trans youth and you're not sure how to support your staff, it's going to be a different reality than if you are a parent with a parent group who all of the parents of trans folks, but maybe you're not sure how to deal with medical conversations. So those kinds of needs may differ, and so the idea is really to do the accompaniment also with external partners to be able to insert their need in real time. So Félix is really good at being able to have conversations surrounding simplifying what the need is, because oftentimes people are like, can you explain what the transes are? And you're like, well, it's a little bit more complex than that. Exactly.
So you have 6 months to like come and do classes.
Exactly. Do you want to do a PhD? And so ultimately, we want to try to look into, okay, what is your actual need? What is the actual situation that you have? And sometimes this examples around like, we have one trans person joining our sports team. How do we handle that? And then it's conversation around EDI, belonging, and tolerance, right? And they're expecting it to be a meeting on like how to not be transphobic, and it's like, well, the premise is how to just be a good person. And it's a much smaller premise than to try to explain the nuances of every single situation, because what we're really doing is this is how we are intersectional in being graceful and mindful, but kind and gracious and empathetic towards each other. And so I think that reframing also helps people understand that trans people are not, alien people that are coming from a different planet and living different realities, or just people that are dealing with a specific type of challenges based on intersections similar to any other intersection that exists. So the humanization of trans, non-binary, and two-spirit people comes from the conversation surrounding how do we support you in understanding that they're just people.
And you know what? It brings up in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, some people perceive it as being abrasive or aggressive with how we give the information on queerness and trans people. Creating a space where people can learn and just be empathetic, I think, changes people's perspectives on like the pressure of having to know everything. I think people sometimes think they have to know everything or be knowledgeable on every term, which is not necessarily the case. And to me, it sounds like you give people the space to learn and grow and just learn new terms and not have to know everything, and it feels like a pressure relief. What are some other misconceptions that you're finding, and how do you approach it?
There is tensions in schools that like it is something that other organizations that are doing education work have been noting. I think that there is this moral panic, this anxiety around like, oh, we're coming in schools to make the kids gay, which is very much not what we're doing. When I'm going into school, there is two goals. There is the goal of educating and increasing empathy and working to decrease stigma. And there is the goal of also, and I think that is something that's really powerful through kiosk and as well through workshops, be a visible queer person in a room, which is something that is can be so meaningful for young queer people, and also it's a way for us to like talk about our services and like, hey, did you know that there are places that you can go that are safe? In my workshops, I'll sometimes encounter some resistance around talking about this. This is private, and taking time to make those bridges, because I think that everyone in some capacity or another can relate to an experience of being discriminated against. So it's a lot of making those like mental links and helping people make those mental links. It's when I'm working with intervention staff, there is, I think, a lot of what you were talking about, this anxiety of like, oh, but I don't know everything, so I know nothing. And it's, I feel like I do a lot of work that's about like soothing and soothing those anxiety, that like asking questions is okay, and not knowing and learning. And as long as you're on that journey of learning, you're like, this is what we need as a community. And so reminding interventions that they have a lot of skills. Like, I feel sometimes they're like, oh, this is a queer person, so I don't know what to do. I'm like, I see your point, but this is a person with anxiety, and you know. Like, you know anxiety and you know how it works, and so there are specific lenses and ways that like queerness can come color experiences, but you also have a lot of skills then.
Similarly, there's a common misconception when we think about liberal spaces or activist spaces or community spaces that you're there because you already know everything.
Right.
And I think that the same humility that we are hoping that the people that we work with are able to provide to us, we need to arrive with as well, right? So sometimes we don't know either. Sometimes there is no right answer or singular answer. I think sometimes when you panic, you're like, just tell me what to do and make it all okay again. And we're like, sometimes you don't have an answer. Sometimes all you can do is sit and listen and say, yeah, it's shitty.
Yeah, it is shitty.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Yeah, it's difficult. And that's all you have, and that's the empathy muscle of being able to sit and not try to find a solution, because you will not be able to find a solution in 20 minutes to oppression.
Never.
But ultimately, the idea is really to be able to think about what does it mean to show up intentionally, as opposed to how does it mean to show up perfectly, because there will never be such a thing. And so the patience surrounding how we do that work and the level of questioning that we also have within ourselves is into, are we the best person for this? Right? Sometimes we're not.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not Felix, sometimes somebody else on the team. Sometimes Felix needs help for something, sometimes I need help for something. So I think for me, when I interact with a lot of other organizations, they're like, oh, but how do you fix my team, right? They don't want to use pronouns. How do we fix it? And it's like, okay, well, take a step back and ask the question, what are they reluctant, right? Why are they reluctant? How are we introducing the premise? Right? They're, oh, my team doesn't want to receive an entire LGBTQ or misconception training. I'm like, okay, let's sit with why. Let's inquire.
What does it mean?
As to what does it mean? Where's it coming from? Are people scared? You know, are people confused? Do they feel overwhelmed? Does your team have capacity to even sit down for 2 hours, talk about something that they don't feel matters to them, right? So I think that we need to take less for granted that everyone is at the same place, because we're not. Most of us are in different places. We're dealing with different realities. Even the premise that the youth is super aware, the youth is dealing with mass information constantly.
Yes.
So parsing through what is relevant, what is not, what makes sense, what doesn't. A lot of it is also rooted in American context and reality. So even thinking about, oh yeah, I read somewhere that this person did this thing, but in the context of Quebec it's completely different. In the context of the rest of Canada, it's different to Quebec also.
It's always different in Quebec.
It's always different in Quebec. Put it on the shirt. So ultimately it's a lot to do with having the patience to ask questions and for those questions to exist in this place where we're not judging and we're not prescribing what needs to happen. We're on the journey with you to figuring it out. And that's the core difference, I think, in what we're trying to do and how we work, is that we're not coming to the school to say, you're doing this wrong. We're coming to the school to say, hey, how can we help?
How can we help? And also, have you thought about it this way? Have you thought about it that way? We're speaking a lot about the public, but I want to pivot to the youth. What are some aha moments you've had since you've been working here with the youth, whether it's in a youth group or with your staff, for example?
I think with the youth, what's really interesting is to see the contrast between how knowledgeable they are about what they need, but also how disempowered they are about voicing those needs in real time. So a lot of the times when you build a relationship with the youth, they will come to me and they'll be like, I demand you do this, because they'll be comfortable enough to tell you. But in their everyday life, you realize that they don't have a lot of spaces where they're being heard or where they're kind of the master of their own destiny. And so when we see with what they're saying to us about their realities in schools or with family dynamics or even with their other friends or even when dating, you can kind of see a deep lack of confidence because they've not been affirmed in those spaces. But then you also speak to them from someone who is affirming them, and then you see their eyes sparkle and they're like, actually, I'm the boss of you and I will tell you what I need exactly in this way. And I think that that's such a beautiful thing to be able to witness, is the evolution of how that confidence in the space translate in other spaces. So they'll come to you and they'll be a lot of them sometimes are also neurodivergent, and so like you see them kind of crouch and kind of hide and make themselves smaller, and over the course of a few weeks to a few months you see them come out and kind of they're like, bye! And they're like moving their whole body language, and you see the difference in their comfort, and you see that also in how they interact with other youth. And so for me, I think the real beautiful premise is to be able to see a 14-year-old come in and kind of not be sure about who they are, what they want to do, and then by the time they're 25 to be able to witness the adult they've become and how confident and self-efficient they are, because the premise of the time they spent with us allow them to feel empowered, and the whole goal is for us to ultimately be obsolete. So it's great to witness that what we do is working.
Right, and that's another thing. You get to sometimes witness them from 14 to 25, which is so cool to see a teenager grow up into a young adult. Just anecdotally, I worked at a camp where they came back every summer, and I got to see that, so I understand the effect of that.
I think what P10 really wants to do and strives for is to be a one-stop shop for whatever you need, and it doesn't mean that everything will be in our own offices, but we will always ensure that you get what you need, even if it is accompanying you to a different spot or a different resource. And so ultimately we have a great website, which is very accessible, which our admin coordinator Charles worked really hard on, and so it's available in both French and English, and it has all of the details of everything that we offer, but kind of to go through everything that we need, everything that we do rather. all of our services, again, are free, so you're able to, if you want to meet with someone one-on-one, book an appointment to talk to them about what your needs are in real time, and then we can kind of trickle back from there to make sure that you're meeting the right person for your needs. So obviously, if you're looking for HRT access, you're going to have something different than if you're looking for just someone to talk to, or talk about your coming out, or talk about maybe bullying that you're experiencing. It's going to be a different staff member with different skill sets, and then we're able to accompany you with the subsidies that we have, so therapy subsidy, hair removal subsidy, we have the gender gear stuff. We also have our community kitchen. So I didn't shout out our community kitchen, but we do have a fridge and food that you can come in and eat. We have a bunch of harm reduction supplies and menstrual supplies as well. Beautiful. So we also have a bunch of makeup that Nix just gave to us. So if you want some makeup as well, different shades. And so ultimately, I think for me, the invitation is just call us, come see us, visit our website, and most likely we will be able to get you where you need to be, and whatever it is that you need, we will do our best to support you in that.
Beautiful.
Do we want to give drop-in times?
Sure. So our drop-in times are Wednesdays from 4 to 6 p.m. From 5 to 7, sorry, on our Wednesdays for our young adults. Then on our Thursdays, it's from 1
to
3,
and
then 4 to 6,
right.
For our gender diversity. And then on the Friday, that's the one that's from 4 to 6 for our teenagers, and so 14 to 17. So feel free to come at any time during those drop-ins to just meet other folks. Our opening hours are from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. from Tuesday to Friday. So you're able to kind of come into the office if you still want to hang out or if you want to learn more about the services. If you're hoping to speak to a staff member for something a little bit more private, then you go on our website and you fill out our intake form, during which you'll be contacted within 2 days to meet with someone. And we're also available online, so if you ever need to meet with us via Zoom or even on the phone, that's also an opportunity. And hopefully we'll see you soon.
Hopefully. It's a beautiful space, and I think everyone should be able to come here at least once if they're looking for it. I'm sad this conversation is done, but I know it's not one of the last ones that we'll have together. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.